All right. Thank you so much for that intro, Ali. So everyone, my name is Ken Amar. I'm an SDR team lead here at Outreach. And today I'm going to give you guys some tactical tips for maximizing your sales engagement platform, especially as a remote SDR manager. I'm currently over the Tampa office of SDRs. I've been managing them remotely for about 2 months now, and we've seen a ton of success. In fact, about an hour ago, we just hit our collective team quota. And hopefully with some of these tips and tricks, you can help your team out too. Awesome. All right, so this all is taking place in a backdrop of, coronavirus, this whole pandemic. Everyone is transitioning to a work from home environment. I have to be completely honest with you guys, I've never worked from home for such an extended period of time. I'm relatively new in my career, as well as the team of SDRs I'm leading. I was really, really worried that, that production for my team would fall. We had a lot of people fresh from school as SDRs that never really worked at home, and there's a ton of uncertainty in the air, right? Awesome. And it kind of felt like the sky was falling, right? Felt like everything was up in the air. No one really knew what was going to happen next. And, I talked with, other SDR leaders, other SDR managers in my company, and also, customers of ours. And everyone had this major expectation of a dramatic decrease in SDR production. Everyone was worried there'd be a ton less meetings set, less opportunities converted, and less pipeline generated by SDR teams. There's a lot of fear about dramatic cutbacks on spending on tools and layoff of SDR teams. And I am sad to say some of that has happened in other industries, but like I mentioned, Outreach, the team I've been managing remotely, has hit quota this month already and last month. And a lot of that has been through how we've kind of managed them and how we've coached them using our platform. Awesome. So this young professional right here, her name is Bailey the Beast Brogdon. All right. So let me give you a little bit of a background on Bailey. So Bailey right now is in her 3rd month as an SDR here at Outreach. She graduated from Chico State earlier in the year, and she moved up to Seattle. She had never been in sales, never been an SDR. And last month, her 1st month ever working from home, Bailey beat one of our all-time records for sales accepted leads. This month, she's on pace to beat another record. It's amazing, and I can't speak enough good things about her. Bailey is a consummate professional. She's an absolute sales killer, but a lot of her success, I like to feel, was from how we coached her in this remote environment and how we kind of maximized her output using some of the things we'll talk about in the rest of this presentation. All right, cool. So maximizing our sales engagement platform. So if you're not aware, Outreach, we're one of the top leading sales engagement platforms. A lot of people think Outreach is just a BDR tool, right? I've been a great SDR at Outreach. I know how to use the tool really well, and I figured as a manager, I can use it even better than most of my peers, right? The platform itself is extremely powerful, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about 3 areas of coaching, 3 areas of opportunity for you guys. The first is an accountability. It's really important to be accountable nowadays, especially when you're over a team that's never really worked from home, that's kind of new to sales and new to SDRing, right? And the next area of opportunity in coaching is reactive coaching. I'll kind of explain what I mean by that. And lastly, proactive coaching. Awesome. So this quote, what gets measured gets managed. This is my boss, Steve Ross's all-time favorite quote. He's our VP of Sales Development, and in our one-on-ones, he'd always tell me this. And frankly, I didn't quite understand it until we started working remotely. He started asking me some questions one day. Ken, what's the average output in activities your team does? How many people do they add to sequence day over day? How many calls are they getting in? What's their call conversion rates? And I realized if I didn't have that data, I couldn't actively coach them. I couldn't actively make them better in these areas, right? And this is especially true as we transition to this remote environment. Cool. So if you're not aware, in Outreach, you can set up teams and you can do basic reporting, right? You can check the amount of emails your reps send per day, per week, per month, how many calls they make, LinkedIn tasks, prospects added to sequence. And I use this every couple of hours. I like to get a gauge on the activities my team are using, but these are kind of like table stakes, right? Everyone is doing this. Everyone is reporting on this. So how can you really manage this? And how can you get your team to put more in, to get more activities in? Cool. So this is a very complicated Excel sheet when you take a look at it, right? It's a lot of numbers going on, but it's really simple. And the premise is on a morning huddle and an afternoon huddle. So every SDR team I've spoken to has some kind of variation, a Zoom huddle where they talk a little bit about the day, but I like to add a little bit more structure into that, right? Every day at 7:30 a.m., I huddle with my team for about 20 minutes. I have a team of 7, right? And I talk to them about goals for the day and not KPIs. KPIs are the bare minimum. Everyone has KPIs. And there's a saying that goes around, if you put in the bare minimum, you get the bare minimum out, right? And so I'm a big believer in goals against KPIs. For example, rep 1 will go first. They'll say, hey, Ken, today I plan to have 20 people in sequence. That's my goal for the day. I'm going to make 70 calls total and 2 net new initial meetings. We'll go down the list, rep 1, all the way through to rep 7. At the very bottom, if you take a look, you can see the total amount of people in sequence, the total amount of people we commit to calls, and the total amount of initial meetings. Now, this is really important because we can kind of get a holistic sense of what the office as a whole is committing towards, what our team goal is, right? So you can see that on this day, my team in Tampa committed to 140 people in sequence, over 490 calls, and 12 net new initial meetings. Then we take a look at our quota. We have a collective quota this month of 57, right? And so we like to talk a little bit about, hey, what are we doing to help hit this team goal? It's very important to build this sense of unity, of teamwork and collaboration, especially when you're stuck in your apartment or your house. And so we'll get all these goals in the morning at 7:30 a.m. and then we'll do a huddle at 4:30. Awesome. So 4:30 comes around, everyone hops onto Zoom for 20 minutes, and we talk about some of the wins of the day. What did we accomplish? What was a great win, right? And then we start going down the list, and we talk about what we actually accomplished against our goals. So for example, rep 1 in the morning committed to 20 people in sequence, but only achieved 16. This is a great way for the rep to work on accountability. They'll say, hey, I couldn't hit my goals because of this, but in the future, I'd like to work on this area by doing this. They also committed 65 calls, 1 net new IM. And so we'll go down that list as a whole, and you'll see at the very bottom, we have an average of 12.57 people in sequence per rep and about 71 calls. Now, this is pretty amazing, okay? When I first took over this team, our reps were averaging about 12 people in sequence and only about 45 calls a day, right? And I realized that it's really important to coach them to do more, to get more out, right? The more activities and the more calls they make, the higher chance they have of hitting their collective quota. You'll notice that our total calls were 503, which is 102% against our goals, and that we are currently pacing, as of this document, at 53 out of 57 sales for sales accepted leads, 92% of quota. At the very top, if you take a look, there's a little table that says business days left in the month 18. And that's like one of the most important things for the rep to always end at. We always huddle up, and the very last thing we say is, how many business days are there left in the month? Because a thing like quota, which is like this monumental thing that people are really scared of, that people are afraid of hitting, you can break that down into individual daily goals. We've seen some tremendous success from this. I'll actually share a copy of this with all the conditional formatting built in at the very end of this presentation. Cool. So the next area of focus is based on this quote that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it, right? So no one expected coronavirus to happen, right? But we've seen that the best companies are reacting really quickly to this and trying to come up with things on the fly on how to change the go-to-market approach, right? And this kind of segues into this next area I like to call reactive coaching. Cool, so reactive coaching, it's pretty simple. It's coaching after the fact something's been done, right? It's like using a lot of detective work, using a lot of legs to like coach the rep one-on-one after they've done an action. And I do all of my reactive coaching based on Outreach Smart Views. So if you're not super familiar with Outreach Smart Views, it's kind of like a Salesforce report, right? It's a sub-folder or filtered view of either accounts, prospects, tasks, reports, sequences, all this good stuff in Outreach. It's a great way for SDRs to quickly see and take action on these things. It's a great checklist as well for progress, accounts, and active pipeline. I use Outreach Smart Views in 3 primary ways to reactively coach my reps. Cool, so emails, oh my God, I love emails. I love email responses, to be clear. Every day in the morning, I log into my computer, I log into Outreach. The very first thing I look at are the responses my reps get from prospects. It's very important to see what kind of responses we're getting, especially nowadays, right? What are prospective clients in the market saying? What are some common objections we can teach our team on, right? And also, it's a good way to kind of enforce best practices. When I was an SDR, the first thing I did whenever I got an email response was to pick up the phone and call the prospect, strike when the iron is hot, right? At the very least, I'd respond to them and I attach a reply sequence. But it's a really great way to coach reps. Hey, you need to take action when the timing's right. And also, another really great thing about Smart Views when it comes to emails is that you can kind of get a holistic sense of where your team or where your rep is. Anecdotally, over the last year and a half, I've onboarded about 85 or so SDRs. I've seen that the top SDRs, on general, have an open rate of 50%, an email reply rate of 10%, and an opt-out rate of 2%. So I can compare people on my team like Bo LaFontaine, Frankie Scarpelli, Joseph Rodriguez, and Carson Boyle against these top reps. Are their open rates and reply rates higher or lower? If it's higher, I'll do some digging. I'll investigate what kind of messaging they're using, and then I can take that learning and apply it to the rest of my team. If they're getting lower than our best reps are doing, it's a great area of coaching. I can kind of see the templates they're using, the sequences and messaging they're sending, and kind of coach them on that one-on-one. All right, so the next Smart View is an account. And if you ever have been an SDR or have ever managed a team of SDRs, the number one most common complaint everyone has, I don't have enough accounts, my accounts are garbage, right? With this Smart View, you can kind of coach that scarcity mentality that a lot of SDRs get stuck in, right? You can say, hey, Bob, you say you don't have enough accounts. Well, on this Smart View, you have about 300 high touch, like ICP accounts, and you're only going after half of them. Furthermore, of these 150 accounts you're actively pursuing, you've only got 1 or 2 points of contact in sequence. Are you really telling me there aren't like net new people we can go after in these accounts, or like half of your book of business is untouchable? Again, this is a really, really important thing to kind of like coach them on that scarcity mentality, especially with, working from home, getting stuck at home, kind of getting stuck in that negative feedback loop, right? And lastly, the Smart View for call. So just a heads up, here at Outreach, we record every single call we make, right? We say, hey, this is Ken with Outreach calling on a recorded line. And so this is important because every evening I log into Outreach and I look at my reps' calls. I'm not looking at the ones where they book a meeting because I can learn from that, but I can learn a lot more by finding the calls where my reps get their pitch or objection handling rejected, right? And then you can start to kind of coach and fix these areas for your reps. You can start to notice trends in what prospects are saying and coach them accordingly, right? All right, and so the last area of coaching is kind of based on this concept that prevention is better than a cure, right? Ironic considering, the coronavirus pandemic, but it's really this idea of proactive coaching, right? Like all the stuff we covered in reactive coaching takes a while to implement, takes some digging on your part, right? You want to prevent these mistakes or these areas of improvement from happening in the first place. And that's where this concept of proactive coaching comes into play. Cool. So area number one within proactive coaching. Every SDR team, every SDR leader, they have power hours or call blitzes, right? And the team I took over had call blitzes every day from 9 to 10. It was great. It was like a team of 10 reps. They're making calls like anywhere from 20 to 40 reps. That's awesome, right? But I noticed that, hey, if we had made a calls blitz like an hour later or an hour before, we could have had a 5% better connect rate on the phones. Now, if you've ever been an SDR, you know how hard it is to get prospects to pick up the phone. If you're managing a team of SDRs, a 5% increase, in connect rates seems like a small thing on paper, but it can have a tremendous impact on meetings booked, opportunity set, and pipeline generated. It's a great way to kind of manage your reps when they call, right? But I like to take that a step further. So within outreach, there's a really little known feature you can use called live listen, right? Not a lot of people use it. Not a lot of people know about it, but it's so amazingly powerful, okay? So kind of give you some context on this, guys. Here at Outreach, we sell to VPs of sales, sales leaders, sales managers, and it's a really tough sell, right? We're salespeople, usually SDRs are brand new in their career, and they're calling these really tenured sales leaders who've been in the industry, who've been selling and managing for 20 plus years. And it's hard, to know when to challenge sales leaders, to know when to, handle their objections and know when not to fold, right? And so this is where I come in, right? I've been on thousands, if not tens of thousands of cold calls. I have been hung up every which way by every single prospect. I have seen hundreds of calls go wrong, right? And I've seen hundreds of calls go right. So I can navigate a cold call a lot better than my new SDRs or the SDRs I have who are struggling on the phones, right? So during these call blitzes, there are time for the best connect rates. I can live listen to my reps' calls and I can navigate. I can Slack them, live time feedback. Hey, you need to step up. You need to challenge that objection right there, or you need to say this value driving question, right? I can give them a real live time feedback that they can take and apply on the phone and book meetings. And we've done that a ton of times, right? And nowadays, with the whole working from home situation, it's super important to kind of build that confidence in your team, right? And you can start to hear like patterns that, certain reps struggle at or certain people are saying on the phones. And so what I've been doing this last month, a little pro tip on how we hit quota. I'll listen to my reps calls, I'll Slack them feedback, but sometimes a prospect just isn't gonna take a call, right? And they'll hang up on my rep, I'll kind of chew them out on the phones, click them. I will call that prospect back on my rep's behalf, all right? I'm gonna say, hey, Mr. Prospect, this is Ken. I'm actually Bob's manager. I listened to the call we had with him. I kind of reviewed the call with him, and I'd love to go to at bat for my rep, right? And we can kind of get a double touch on these prospects. People love that, all right? We've seen some fantastic success. We've in fact booked 12 meetings doing that, right? We're selling as a team, the rep and the manager. All right, and lastly, the last area in proactive coaching. What are your reps emailing, right? You want to get a pulse on the emailing and the messaging they're sending out. It's really easy to do in outreach. You can have all of your reps BCC you on all the first emails they send. And responding to an email takes you, the manager, like 30 seconds max, 20 seconds max, right? But usually reps don't get responses from prospects back. And this is a great way to kind of give them lifetime feedback on emails. And we've seen some awesome success from those guys. All right, so I know we covered a ton of information. Here's a sample of my daily tracker with conditional formatting built into Excel. Obviously you guys all know my LinkedIn, it's Ken Amar at Outreach, and my email address is also ken.amar@outreach.io. And Allie, do we have any questions from the crowd?
Yes, we do. I am going to remove your, there you go. And you should be able to navigate where you were changing slides, and you should be able to see the Q&A and the chat. We got lots of questions. It was lighting up.
Oh, I love it. Awesome. All right. So the first question we got from Mark Maklovich. By focusing so much on goals, do you feel your team or individuals lose a little of quality? That's a great question. It's not binary though, right? Like just because they put in more calls and more emails, that doesn't mean like they're sacrificing quality, right? Reps have 8 hours in a day to send out emails, to make calls. You're trying to make them even better, right? Each email they send, you want to push them to work on their craft, their salesmanship, and improve that way. The next email we have question from Christy Hartzell. Ken, do you have the template for this Excel sheet? Unsure how to create the template for my team. Yeah, so when the slides are shared, I've got it built in. It's open and free for everyone. I'll share that with you guys afterwards. Awesome. And then Margaret Forbes, does your team do their own prospecting or do you provide leads? So our team does their own prospecting. They have a book of business, usually about 200 to 300 accounts, depending on where they ramp. And within those accounts, they find leads, like new contacts to pull in. Awesome. And then Sheen Dar, so do your SDR reps think you're micromanaging if you focus on numbers? I love this because I'm focused on results and number driven. My managers like this, but others in the team criticize her for micromanaging us with KPIs and daily metrics. That's a really fair question. I wouldn't say it's micromanaging because you're setting goals, right? In the beginning, you're telling the reps, hey, you need to do more than the bare minimum in KPIs, right? Eventually, they'll start thinking, hey, I can put in 5 more people into sequence every day. I can make 10 more calls, right? And if they start doing that, it's like compound interest, right? The more calls they make, the more emails they make, the more they feel like they can do this and the more outputs they'll get in.